Well, welcome everyone to a new series called Figma for Absolute Beginners. We're talking Figma for dummies, Figma for noobs. You know, if you're someone who's afraid of computers or has never even thought of or gotten any far at all with a desktop publishing app like Figma, this is for you. So here we are. We're in our web browser. I'm on a Mac and I'm using Google Chrome. So whatever you use to get on the internet, whether it's Safari or Edge or Internet Explorer or Chrome or Firefox, I think some of those might be no longer in use, but you get the picture. Go ahead and navigate to figma.com, and then you want to get started. So we'll just click this Get Started for Free button, and I would recommend using one of your emails. So I'll throw one of my emails in here, and we're going to pick a password. So, pick something that's 10 or 12 digits long, and it's usually a good idea to have a number and a special character like a question mark or a dollar sign, something like that. So let's see, what should I use? Okay, and you want to keep that password private. Okay, and saying check your inbox. And if you have Gmail or Outlook, you can click on one of these buttons, but I'm using Yahoo. So let's go to Yahoo real quick. You know what? And I'm in an incognito browser just because I already have a professional version of Figma, but I didn't want to confuse you by using the professional version, because things are a little bit different. Even though the free version is just as capable, I've noticed that they start kind of pushing different things on you when you're a free user, and it might get a little confusing. So let's see, I clicked on the link and let's see. Yeah, it opened up my existing. So let's try just pasting it in here. That's gonna work. Okay, good. So brings me in here, asks me what my username should be. It chose IKEEE because that was part of my email. So we can go ahead and choose that. Just gonna do it because I'm learning design. This stuff doesn't really matter. Anyone else be joining you? Skip this. Have you used? No, it's my first time. Continue. I just want to do the starter version, and you can see you only have 3 files: basic design, prototyping, and collaboration. But if you get the professional version, there are some other options here, which mostly involve collaboration and sharing with other users. And then because I'm new, it's asking me, do I want to make an app, a website, some kind of graphic? And I'm just going to skip that. There's some AI stuff, so we could leverage AI if we want, but I'm going to skip that as well. And so this is what you're going to see. Now we're in Figma. We've got the welcome Figma stuff here. They show you some FigJam basics, Figma basics, team library. You can take a quick tour of the file browser, so it's probably a good idea to do that. but I'm just going to hit no thanks since I'm attempting to show you this by myself, right? Okay, so after you've installed Figma, the first thing you're going to see is this screen here, where you will see different options. Up here at the top, you could type in a prompt and have AI make something for you. So this may be a good way to start out, right? These may be in a different order. FigJam Basics may come first. I've already clicked into here, so that's what it's doing, is it's reorganized these files by the most recent version that's open. Okay, so if I look over here on the left-hand side of the navigation, you can see under my username, I've got a drop down with settings, also the desktop app. So if you don't want to work inside of your web browser, you could download that. You could add an account here. Maybe you have a separate account through work, or someone's invited you to another account, for example. You could access it there. But normally you're going to start at recents. And then community, this is where you can see things that other people have created. This iOS and iPad kit is a good one from Apple. So I'd recommend that. A lot of good stuff here. You can, I click on my team. Right now I've just got the free program, but I could create a new team, and then that would probably require me to have a paid version. You have your drafts, which is basically where a lot of these recents are going to live, and then all your projects. And so I've got an example of a team project, plus I could create a new project, but that would mean I would need to upgrade to a paid version. So I click into this team project, I can see here's that Ike's team library. And I can create additional files up to 3. So that's in all projects, resources. This requires professional, and then if you've deleted something, you'll find it in your trash folder. This is an ad asking you to view plans to extend your capabilities, especially around number of files and projects, as well as your ability to collaborate with others. The team project, that is just this is a starred or a favorited option of mine. So that gives you an idea of where this is at. So if you're seeing something different, check these different tabs to see if you can find what you're looking for. Recents is a good one, or all projects are usually where I'm at most of the time. But let's go back to recents and let's open up this Figma Basics. So with that open, since this is our first time in here, it's giving me this walkthrough, this little tutorial down here at the bottom. And it says get started with a frame. And so you can see I'm moving the canvas around, or the page, and I'm doing that on my mouse pad, my touchpad on an Apple device or a laptop. And you can also do that by holding down spacebar and moving your mouse around. That will click and moving. Yep, that will do it. Looks like I created a tiny little frame down there accidentally. I'm going to delete that. And then to zoom in on a mouse pad, you can pinch your fingers in and out just like on an iPad. Or if you're on a mouse, hold down Control or Command and gradually move your mouse around to zoom in or out. Up for zoom out, down for zoom in, at least on my computer. But play around with it. And then So once you've got it where you want, we'll go ahead and click on this frame button again. Then we'll just draw out a rectangle. There we have it. And at the bottom, we can see some dimensions here. 1517 by 1612. So if you're not making anything specific, then that doesn't matter a whole lot. But if you're trying to design something for a specific output, like a printed page, for example, you need to make sure this is the right dimensions. So if you select your frame, you'll get your options over here. Now, before we get into some of these options, just note that there's the design tab here at the top, or button, and then there's a prototype tab or button. So if you aren't seeing what you think you should be seeing, make sure to check that design is selected. Prototyping is for more advanced users who are creating some actual interactive experiences, but that's outside of the scope of this project. So back to design. So anything that is selected on your page will, what you can do with it essentially will be over here. So if I unselect it by clicking outside of the frame, things change. And now I have page as my top identifier label at the top of this right-hand column or sidebar. And so you'll notice it does have a color here, and that 6-digit code right there is called a hexadecimal code. Each color has its own 6-digit code. And if I click on that box, it gives me an option to change the color of this page. So maybe the gray is too light for you, it's hard to see the frames. You could change that to a darker gray. And now these frames, there's more contrast, and or you want it bright red, whatever. You can change it to any color you'd like. So that is a little bit of that about what's going on there. You don't need to worry about variables, styles, export. At this time, we won't worry about that. But again, let's select the frame. And as I was saying, if you want the output of this to be something specific, like for a website or a printed 8.5 by 11 page that you want to print something on your printer, then you want to change the size of this. So with frame selected, I can go to this frame label here that's a drop down, and I've got several options for kind of standard sizes that you might want. So a letter is a standard 8.5 by 11 page. So if I click on that, that is a portrait 8.5 by 11 page, okay? It's based off a 72 by 72 resolution. That's why the number's relatively small. So if you wanted to print it at 300 by 300 DPI, you just need to, say 8.5 inches times 300 equals what amount, and then 11 times 300 equals 3,300 or whatever, and you can make those changes. But the nice thing about Figma is you can design it at this size, and as long as it's the right proportions, later on you can resize this in a way that will not really affect anything you've created there, as long as the images and such are of a high enough resolution. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you. I would recommend stopping from time to time, trying some of these things that I'm talking about. And if you have a question or you didn't quite catch something, rewind back to an earlier part, try it again, and so forth. And feel free to drop me any comments of maybe additional videos you'd like me to make, or dive in deeper on a specific element, or maybe I can just answer your question through commenting. So feel free to drop me a comment. But okay, so we've got our frame, we've got the size. With it selected, here are our options. We can, for example, change the color of the fill, this white area of the frame, just like we did the color of the page. So let's say we want this to be a blue color. And if we're printing this on our printer, just be aware it's going to print this color now. If you left it white, it wouldn't print it. It would just be left transparent. Okay, so that's the basics about a frame. And a frame, just to make this clear, is basically your page, your container for what it is you're creating. So when you go to save this out, export it, it will just save what's inside of this frame. You don't need to worry about all this extra stuff on the edges unless you're saving something specifically out from that. So let's move on with Figma's little tutorial here. So I'll hit next. And so 2 of 5 is the text tool. So with text, this text tool, T for text, I can draw a shape and I see this little cursor, this one-line cursor blinking at me. That means I can type something. So let's just type in hello world, exclamation point. And it would be helpful if you spelled it right. So now with this text box created, I can move it around. Okay. I can also change the font, which is, the current font is Enter. It's under typography. So if I click on that, I get other font options that come built in. And you can also add your own fonts, or it will pull fonts from your computer, but we're not going to worry about that in this lesson. So I chose a different font, and now it's still pretty small on this page, so I'd like to make that text bigger. So to do that, I've got this drop down for size. Right now it's at 12. If I go down to like 36 or 96, let's go to 64, that's pretty good. So you can see it gave me options, and it doesn't give me every number on the planet. You don't want to go much lower than 10 because that's just too small to be seen or read. But you can if you want, because in addition to this being a drop down, I can click in there and key in a size. So let's say I wanted to go a little bigger, I'll go to 72. There we go, now the font size is 72. And right now the line height, so let's say this were multiple lines like this. The line height right now is set to auto, but you can click in there and change the height. So if I were to type in 72, which is the same as the font height, that's what it gives me. It stays the same. And again, this is based on kind of a free-flowing box. Okay. So, but if I went lower, so you can key things in, or another thing you can do is hold down Alt and then click and drag your mouse to the side and change any of these numbers, boxes kind of on the fly without having to key it in. So there we go. I've tightened it up and it went to a line height of 38. And then the next box over here is letter spacing. So that's the distance between each letter. So if I were to, again, hold down Alt or Option and drag, click and drag, it's going to change the spacing. You can see it wraps to additional lines, and that's because of the size of my text box here. So if I wanted to keep it from doing that, I can drag it out. So that's a little ridiculous, that much letter spacing. So maybe we'll do like 5%, and we can play with that. And then, if we drag this corner, it changes the size of the text box, but it doesn't change the size of the text inside. So what you need to do is, you know, drag that out, but then you could change the text size here, but then it doesn't change the line height or the letter spacing necessarily. So if you want to scale everything, you want to use the scale tool, and that's down here underneath the arrow in this drop down. There's the scale tool. So if we click on that or hit K on your keyboard, now if we scale it, you can see it scales the text, the line height, the spacing, everything. We lost our options over here because when you're in scale mode, it gives you some different options. So if I want to go back to having these options, I got to go click on the drop down, select move, or hit V on the keyboard as the shortcut. Now I've got my font back. I can see after I scaled it, what size did it make that font, the line height, and so forth. I like to keep my font sizes to round numbers that are easy to remember. So I'm going to click on that and just hit 200, enter, change my line height to like 105, enter, and we're good to go. You know, for those of you who've used other desktop publishing applications, Microsoft Word, Photoshop, Illustrator, some of these options will be familiar to you, but for example, right now the text is justified or aligned to the left based on this alignment here. If I were to click on the one next to it, it will align it to center. The one next to that, align to the right. So you've got those options. Also, you'll notice if I make this text box taller, the text stays up here in the top left side of the box, and that's based on left alignment and top. But if I were to click align middle, then it aligns it to the middle of this text box, or to the bottom of the text box. So that is important to note. In addition, we've got this little type settings box here that gives us some other things we can do. For example, underline your text, strike through, and if we go to this icon on the far left, it gets rid of any of those options. There are some additional options over here for underlining and thickness and we can make our text all capital with that or all lowercase. So these are nice little settings. We can add bulleted list, but then you'll see it squishes it all over here. So there would be, you would think there would be some settings to kind of change that, but I don't think they give you a lot of control. Click on details up here, and then there is some additional stuff we could play with. We're back to basics or variable. Now, don't worry about variable. That's out of the scope. But you can see the various different options with the text, and we, just like with the frame, we can also change the color of the text, you know. And these colors down here are selecting any color that's being used on this entire page here. So that's where you get that. Okay, so there's the rundown on text. Next, okay, it's going to go through how to change some formatting, and then take some time to adjust your frame size. We already did that. Oh, and then the final step, 5 of 5, this is something that may kind of start to bug you, is these assets essentially. practice more here. So if you open up your project and you see this stuff on the left and you're like, wait a minute, what happened to my layers? Just know that's because assets have been highlighted here, but we can go back by clicking on File. So we're not going to worry about those assets. So back to our frame here with our Hello World text. I mean, we're creating some amazing design already, right? So moving on with these tools along the bottom. So we've already done frame. Now if we click on the drop down, there's some other options, section and slice. Those are good, especially for websites, but little advanced for this stage. I wouldn't worry about it. Your next object over here along the bottom is your shape tool. So we've got rectangle, line, arrow, ellipse, polygon, star, image, or video. Let's go ahead and start with the rectangle, shall we? So with rectangle selected, and if I draw the shape of a rectangle, and you can see it is a rectangle, it's kind of hard to get it to be a square unless you hold down Shift. Then it will snap it to a perfect square. And then after I've drawn that square, you'll notice that it defaults back to my move arrow, so I can manipulate the square. You'll see if I move it too far to the right or left, it starts to get chopped off. But you can see that there's still a square, it's just being chopped off. And that is due to the fact that when we click on frame, this frame has a certain setting selected called clip content, which means that anything inside of here can be seen, anything outside of this frame will be hidden or clipped. If we uncheck that, boom, there's your box. So you may be easier for you to have that off while you're working, and then when you're done and you want to see the final design, you can turn that on. It's up to you. But just know that that's why we can't see it. And if you haven't noticed it yet, anything I do over here on the page is highlighted over here in our layers. So if I select rectangle here, it selects the rectangle over here. If I select text over here, it selects the text over here. All right, and it changes depending on what this says here, will change to match what it says here. So rather than just being called text, it says hello world, just like this says hello world. So that's important. And you can see the hierarchy here. It's underneath the frame, which means it's inside of it. So if I close that, we don't have anything sticking out. But let's say I were to slide this rectangle above the frame. Yeah, above the frame. Now we can see it, but wait a minute, I thought the frame was supposed to clip anything. Well, it is, as long as it's inside of the frame, but this rectangle's outside of the frame. So sometimes this will happen accidentally. You're moving it around, and it'll pop out. Like if I move it back into the frame, you can see it's actually back in the frame, and I've got it, just like we had at the beginning. But if I keep moving it past, it thinks we want it outside of the frame, so it does that for us automatically. But just be aware of that, because when you go to export something, let's go ahead and change the color of this frame, or this square, to like a purple. And let's say we want to export this frame. First of all, I'd recommend you name it, so we can double click on this and we'll type in hello world letter. Hit enter. So now it's changed the name, and we want to export this entire frame. So we'll make sure the frame is selected either here or here. Scroll all the way to the bottom and just click on export. And it will give us this export option here. 1x means it'll be the exact same size. or we can do the drop down and we'll say, 3x or 4x. So if it is print, I would recommend probably doing 4x. And then you can change the format from PNG to JPEG to PDF. Again, if it's print, I'd say go PDF. So, and then we've got a drop down here. And I would just keep this stuff probably the same. Although quality, go up to high, imagery sampling, blah, blah, blah. As far as I know, Figma doesn't do CMYK. Everything's RGB, display, RGB, sRGB. So for print, usually you want CMYK, but this is a digital first application, and if you're printing something out of this, you're probably not too worried about the exact colors. Okay, so to export it, we just click on this export hello world. Click on that, it thinks for a minute, then it asks you where you want to put it on your computer. So I'm on a Mac, I'm going to choose desktop, and if I hit save, then great. I go to my desktop, there it is, the PDF right there on my desktop. And you can see that purple square is there. Everything's there, just as intended, right? But let's say this square was not inside of the container or the frame. Let's go ahead and export it again. This time it added a 1 at the end so it doesn't save over the same file. Hit save. I'll go back to my desktop and you'll notice that purple rectangle is gone. See, here, gone, here, gone. So that's why it's important to make sure your stuff lives inside of your frame, because otherwise it's not going to export correctly. And a way you can check that inside of your application is just to select your frame and then click on this eye toggle to show and hide the layer. So I'm going to click on it, hid the layer or the frame, but the purple box is still there. So that means the purple box is not part of the frame. So I need to drag that in. Now it is. Now if I hide it, boom. So there you go. That is the most basic thing you can do in Figma, basically. We started with a frame. We then changed some attributes of the frame, the size of it, the color. Then we moved on to the text. We learned how to resize it, pick a different font, change the color, change the line height, the letter spacing. And then finally, we learned how to create a shape and then how to export your project so that you can send it to somebody or print it off on your printer. So I hope this first lesson on the super basic beginner noobs Figma for Dummies lesson was helpful. Please join me next time as we discover a little more about what you can do inside of Figma.